Well, hello, I'm Roger Gray, and survivor of the CARR fire. Along with 7 other neighbors, we stayed and fought the fire. Some stayed here, and some came back into the fire to help neighbors. I'm ex-Navy for 4 years, and the Navy is probably the best of the armed forces to train for firefighting, because everyone gets firefighting experience in boot camp. And I was Naval Air, so we not only got firefighting in boot camp, but we also got firefighting trainings and updates every so many months, and trainings on aircraft fires, hangar fires, and such. So, and I'd also been in a couple of fires, one brush fire in Texas, and also a wheat fire that we accidentally started on a farm in North Dakota. And so I had some experience. And Gary Lyons, who's my next door neighbor, was a retired battalion fire chief here in California, and we've been having conversations about fire prevention for 30 years. And just because we're in the edge of the city here doesn't necessarily mean it won't burn. And all that preparation came into effect last July. Well, the lessons learned that I learned from this was preparation is king. You can't prepare in an hour or two your dwelling if you've had 10 years of neglect. And this house right next to us is a good example of that. If you'll see all the juniper that is right up against the side of his house and along his wooden fence, that is what catches on fire first. A lot of the bark that you see, embers were falling on them in the other homes and setting these this landscape bark on fire. I call it home briquettes, because embers can land on this and smolder for hours, and when the wind picks up, it will just ignite. And it will set all your brush on fire, all your landscaping, all your cedars and your junipers on fire, your wooden fences. The heat goes right up, and if you'll look at this eave right here, this vent, this will set your home on fire in a hurry. When the juniper, the landscaping bushes catch on fire, the heat goes right up into the eaves, and the fire goes into that vent, and that sets your insulation on fire, and your home will be gone in 20 minutes. One of the things that Gary and I, retired battalion chief, were talking about after the fire was that we needed hardware for these hydrants and we needed hoses. If we had had some hoses, it would have made our jobs a whole lot easier, rather than jumping over fences, dragging somebody's garden hose from house to house to house to put stuff out, because that's what Gary was doing. It would have made it and it would have made it more defensible, and it would have made we could have stretched out hundreds of feet of hoses, going from, you know, to 1.5 inches down to 1 inch, down to 3/4 in steps, and we could have had a lot of hose set out here and could have done a whole lot better job of it. some of the homes that burned had big swimming pools, and if they had had a pump, and even if they had evacuated, if other neighbors and the fire departments knew that there was equipment there to fight that fire, it would have made a difference, because we didn't get any fire trucks in here. The fire started around 6:30 or 7, and we didn't see a fire truck until about 10 o'clock. And not only could these swimming pools be used by private owners and other civilians that were freelancing, but also that's a water source immediately set up for the firefighters that when they come in. And if those things were known about by the fire departments and kept up by the civilians, that would go a long ways. The conditions were horrible. The air was so thick you could almost cut it. And I had to switch from P95 charcoal mask to my paint respirator just to be able to breathe. It got so, the acids were in the air so thick from all the burning and then the toxins in the homes. This side of the trail also had some creosote posts that were here, same as over on this side. And the higher grass caught the creosote posts on fire, and those things you couldn't hardly put out. And they burned all the way down to the bottom of the hole, and they just smoked for days. They were incredibly hard. I was out here with a bucket and trying to douse them out, and you just couldn't put them out. All of this over here, they've cleaned the majority of all the burned ladder fuel and some of the smaller brush, and also probably about a dozen trees that were totally burned. When the fire came in, it just moved in, and all of this was on fire. The asphalt river trail was a great fire break. I had this field mowed down to about like that, so there wasn't any heat source really to speak of. At the last time I checked, in our Redding Estates neighborhood, there were 68 homes that burned completely down, and I'm not sure what the count is on the fire damage, because a lot of yards and homes got partially burned. Not only did they get burned, but a couple of blocks down there was wind damage, like tornado damage from the fire tornado that came through, that was actually ripping shingles right off the roofs. There were sheds that were blown into fences and wrapped around trees and fences, and also they were splitting. There was a couple of incidents of very large oak trees that were just halved, split in half, and a 30 or 40 foot redwood that was just toppled over, pushed over in this person's yard. And it was lucky that it fell into the yard and it didn't hit the house, and it didn't block the street off. After about, I don't know, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, or it might have been 2.5 hours, I'm not exactly sure, of fighting this fire, the fire department showed up, and thank God they did, because these 3 homes here were all on fire, and the heat source from this home that was burning was melting all the siding that's, you can see now, has been replaced, but not their plastic fence line. They had a fence that was plastic, and if it had been wood, their house would have been gone. And they had plastic vinyl that was beginning to melt and droop, but it didn't catch on fire. And the neighbor and Donovan were out here trying to get some water on the side of this White House, but the problem, you couldn't get close enough to it to do really any good. So the fire department finally got here, and then they started hitting the side of this White House start cooling it down, and the side that was threatening this dwelling. These 3 homes are on fire, and the major problem with these 3 homes and why they burned was because they had 30 years of landscaping all the way up close to the house. They had lots of rose bushes that caught on fire, got up into the roof, and there was no stopping it. So, all of this was on fire beside their home and on the other side. Big part of the reason that it didn't burn as rapidly and as intensely was because of all the rock work. You see, there's a driveway, there's a circular driveway that helped. All the rock in the front and along the side. They also had an orchard on the other side with short grass that helped. It burned, but there wasn't much heat to it. And also the fire department and Gary was down here helping to direct the firefighters when they got here. They crashed through the gate and began to work to put out the fires around that threatened this home. Now the Verhoes home on further down, that was burning intensely, and the propane tank had caught on fire and was just cooking the heck out of all the trees and the house that was next to it because it was super hot. The flames coming off the redwoods was probably as high as the redwoods themselves. The flames on the propane tank were at least 200 feet high, and that set a fire and cooked everything around it because it was tremendous heat. It was an interesting thing though. Donovan was across the street. He lives here in the blue house. He's also a firefighter and battalion chief, I believe, in Mendocino County. And he was down there saving his house and the house next to him. And he was watching all this take place. And when the Verhoes house caught on fire, there was a torrent of fire from all the redwoods and all the vegetation around their home, and it just created a wall of heat that got deflected by the redwoods, and a lot of the cinders was coming over this house and was dropping on this field next to it. So that was one of the strange phenomenon that you see in fires. You just can't, you have to witness it to understand all the dynamics that are taking place. And Donovan had gotten his family out. Grass fires and the ladder fires were coming in from the west, and also this ridge was on fire, and it was coming down in both directions. So he was quite busy. His wife was on the phone to other firefighters trying to get him some help, and also telling him that everybody was deployed. So she finally reached one of the firefighters that knew him and had parked his truck at the roadblock 3 miles up the hill. So he was in his turnout gear and he was running in the smoke so thick you could barely breathe, 3 miles all the way down the hill, 2 miles down the hill. It gets to the end of Harlan Drive, calls Donovan up and says, "Donovan, which way do I go? It's so dark and smoky, I can't tell. I can't read the street signs." And Donovan says, "Take a left." So he's running all the way down, and him and Donovan team up to begin to fight that fire there and do what they can with these other homes. Eric, in the turquoise home down there, he's a firefighter, and he was deployed already and was told that his house was probably burned. So he's fighting everybody else's, saving everybody else's home, thinking, "Oh geez, what am I going to come home to?" So he's on the horn talking to his roommate, and his roommate comes in before they block the roads off, and he comes in, drives up, and he's starting to
fight the fire. The oldest son in the gray house, he had stayed. They'd gotten the family out, but he stayed, so it was Derek's roommate and the oldest son were teamed up to fight the fires on both sides of theirs. Plus, you got Gary going from house to house with hoses and doing what he can, and Donovan at the other end, plus his buddy, and plus me and Lori at Gary's house, and that freed Gary up to freelance on the other side. So we probably affected at least 13 to 15 homes, probably. So this is the actual nozzle and the hose that I use. This is a 3/4 inch, and this was the and it's got a really good volume. So